Again, this is a supplementary lecture, and this is on Chapter 8, Organizational Structure and Design. One thing that's really important to know, obviously, before we begin, the textbook isn't explicit on this, but it's very important, is that the strategy, an organization's strategy, which we just talked about before, is moderated or changed, if you will, through structure. And so in this, it says this in the textbook specifically, but strategy in that organizational structure is chosen. The organization chooses it simply because it seems to be the best idea, seems to be most efficacious, or the best way to carry out strategy. So it's not just it's just not like things just kind of fall a certain way, or someone chooses an organizational structure simply for some other reason than strategic importance. So this is part of the management process. Obviously, planning, organizing, leading, controlling. Planning, this is the second step. This falls under the organizing. Again, you can pause and read the slide there that's on the right. But the idea would be is that these structures allow for the arrangement of resources and for people, and that's really what we're talking about. When we talk about structure, we're actually talking about organizing all the resources within an organization as a means to carry out goals. And so that's why strategy is moderated or changed, if you will, either more effective or less effective through an organizational structure. The structures are pretty simple, and they're basically they're regarded or seen in organizational charts. And so organizational charts just aren't simply a matter of who reports to who or who's in charge, but really they're trying to communicate how, in fact, the organization has decided to align itself structurally in order to carry out organizational objectives. So you'll see in a minute that there are a number of different organizational choices or structures, and those structures are really determined how you want to structure yourself is really determined on what you really want to accomplish. So, for instance, if you have a number of highly innovative tasks that need to be done for products, you probably don't want to create an assembly line, right? You don't want a bunch of people doing one thing and the next. You probably want a group of people thinking together. If it's a highly technical feature, that highly technical product, you're going to want a bunch of people gathering around in a team thinking about it, and probably not even having somebody who's leading it. So it'll become more clear as we move on, and that's what we're going to do. So these structures communicate the division of labor, who's going to be doing what job, the formal structure, and this is kind of a reporting structure. Who's going to say yes or no, who's going to get what information, who's going to get who's next in the decision-making process. And if we were to go back, if those organizational charts, right, they have one person and two people under that person, and then those two people that are under the one person, there's four people, and then it keeps branching out like a tree in a sense. And that's all referred to as span of control, which is how many people I have reporting to me, how many people I need to manage, how many people are reporting to me. Given that, the importance of formal structures, that is what we just saw and what we're going to look at, there are a lot of informal structures in organizations. That is, people can report to and people can collaborate with others to make decisions, and people can do other things that are outside the existing structure of the organization. Usually that's referred to as the shadow organization. That's not bad. It's how a lot of work gets done. So even everywhere I've worked, including HCU, if I have something that needs to be done and I know the person over me is the person to do it, I may not contact them. If I know the person in another department who does the same function, I know that person I need to contact is out, or they'll probably have to call the other person. I'm not trying to shortcut anybody or challenge anyone's authority. I know the person over me. We're in good standing. I tell them later I went and contacted this person in this other department, and they said yes. And typically they're going to say, that was great, good job, thanks. And the point is that the structure is there really as a guide, but the ultimate goal is to try to get the ultimate job for an organization is trying to get goals accomplished. And so that's why these shadow organizations this. The functional structure is probably the most common. It's usually used in small businesses, and it basically assigns roles in an organization based on, just like it says, their function. So their finance, marketing, production, whatever. And it seems to work fairly good. There's a lot of advantages, which is, you get the most efficient use of resources because you assign people, marketing into marketing, finance into finance, and these people end up becoming experts. And it's super easy to train once you're in that function. And you can see how career paths work. You start in accounting as a bookkeeper, and there's a manager of the accounting department. You know how to go forward. This is basically the functional chart, and you can see that there are numerous. There's numerous people in charge. There's for instance, a bank manager, and there's somebody who manages loans and manages investment, manages operations. So they're just broken down by function, pretty straightforward. The one challenge in this, though, is that if you break an organization down by its functions, typically people end up with what's called the silo or chimney effect, or functional silo effect. And that just simply means it's hard for people in marketing to understand what people in accounting are doing. And in fact, it's hard for them to think collaboratively around some organizational goals, simply because each department or each function is really concerned with what it's there for. Divisional structures are a little bit different, and basically what we're doing here is that you're grouping, in a sense, these functions like accounting, marketing, but you're grouping them, and there might even be duplicity. You might have accounting in one division, either about concerning a product, like John Deere has lawnmowers and they have tractors. So you may have accountants in both the lawnmower division and the tractor division. And the point would be is that it's grouped not so much by the function, it's really grouped by the product or service. And this is basically to create more responsiveness. Again, this is a strategic decision. It's because the products or the services in some cases are just different. And so it's to create more responsiveness or more specificity or more expertise to the product or service that the division is looking at. You could have geographical divisions too. So in other words, you have a Northwest division for Volkswagen, and you have a Northeast division for Volkswagen. And the Northeast, if you met a Northeasterner in the States, you met a Northwesterner, they have different ideas, goals. They market to them different. The sales are different. In other words, the amount of volume that they go through is different. So there's going to be some differences, and that's really what the divisional structure tries to account for. I'm going to let you read through this. You can pause the video and read through this, but there's advantages really to just divisional structure, and I mentioned some of those. But you can look through some of those and just pause the video, and we'll keep going then when you hit play. Divisional structures, like I said, they group together people and jobs devoted to a single product or service. And it can be in geographic locations. It can also be based on the product. And you can pause the video and read through that. I already pretty much covered this. Matrix structure is a little bit different. And what that does, the matrix structure actually takes and puts products or services into kind of like teams. So you do have like a team of a product or service, or maybe even if you want to think about it in a weird way, it's kind of like this one. HCU is a matrix organization. And so you have the business department as the dean of the business department. And then the dean has to go through various other departments. In our university, it has to go through the provost's office, it has to go through admissions, and it has to go through athletics. And the idea would be is that it's each one of these different divisions, if you will, right? So they're different divisions like athletics and academics. They support one another, but they have some different ways that they function. So our college would have to walk through each one of the surrounding departments or divisions, if you will, if we get large enough. And the challenge with this is that you end up having, kind of two bosses, the one that we report to in the business college, or the one you report to, for instance, in Volkswagen operations, if you will, or manufacturing operations. And then you have to go through marketing, and you have to go through all the other components. The advantage to a matrix organization is that when something's done, it's passed all the checks and it's good to go. You know you're clear. And so basically what we've done, and just so you can account, we really kind of looked at three structures: functional, divisional, and matrix. And that's the textbook does more than that. But those are the three. And now this was be the fourth that I'd like you to focus on. It's good knowledge for you to have, and not only for a manager, but just to understand when you're working in an organization how they work. And this is the last one. Well, it's the last one we're going to look at. There's more organizational structures than this. There's the clover leaf and open organizations, and there's a number of them. But the team structure, these four are usually the most common. And basically, this one basically suggests that tasks are broken into teams. So you have a product that you want to develop or a service that you want to develop, and you assign it basically to various teams where everyone works fairly collaboratively. Sometimes there's not even a boss. You look in your textbook and there's a number of different iterations on how teams work, but sometimes there's not a boss. Sometimes it's just a team that works together and reports to a boss. And team structures are very common in IT companies, but they're also very common in higher ed, in lawyers' offices, and physicians' offices, physician groups, just like professional agencies. There are some companies like Target that kind of does a blended approach where they do have some team, and they are actually team. They're working together in a team on the floor. They spend time together, they work together, they collaborate together. There's a manager over them, but they're also a division. So here's the important thing to take away. Those four structures: functional, divisional, matrix, and now team. And here's the interesting thing is that you kind of combine them. They act like a recipe of sorts. So, okay, thanks.